Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. My name is Ellen Rogin, and as always, I have guests that bring you great information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And I am really excited to have David Macchia with us today, and we're going to have a really interesting conversation about not only his concept of a constrained investor and what that is, but how the industry can really use these ideas to serve women investors better and how he's out there advocating for this to happen. So let me give you a little bit about his official background. David Macchia is an author, entrepreneur, public speaker, marketing communications expert. He's been around the industry for years, working to improve Americans' retirement security. His company he's the founder of Wealth 2K Inc., and it's the leading provider of income solutions. He also is a creative force behind Women and Income, which is the first retirement income solution expressly designed for boomer women. And what I really appreciated and loved about the conversation I had with David when we met a few weeks ago is how he is really a fearless advocate for strengthening women's retirement security, has seen how the industry has not served women in the ways that they should be served. And I really appreciate that there's a man out there with this voice and filter, because usually it's women that I've interviewed that are making a stand towards this. So, David, welcome. I'm thrilled that you're here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Ellen. I'm excited to be with you.
I want to start by better understanding what is a constrained investor.
Sure. Well, I'd say it's a couple of things. It's a noun, first of all. It's an individual who reaches retirement with a certain financial profile. But I think it's deeper than that. I think it's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking about assessing clients' needs and serving those needs. So I would reduce it to this, that, constrained investors are people who get to retirement with money, which is great, but the amount of money isn't high relative to the level of income that they need to create to support what I would call a minimally acceptable lifestyle. These are folks who have enough money to retire. They don't have enough money to make mistakes. And when you're in that category, which comprises a lot of people in the United States, your first planning priority has to be to mitigate the risks that can reduce or even wipe out someone's retirement income. And so longevity risk mitigation is very important. Timing risk mitigation is very important. Having good behavioral habits so that you can stay durably invested in your risk assets and ultimately mitigating inflation and inflation risk. Those are the kind of things that matter a lot. And they matter to men, and they especially matter to women because, if no other reason, they're increased longevity.
Are there other reasons that you find that this is particularly important to women, or why women's retirement planning would be different, in addition to the fact that they live, in general, they have longer longevity estimates
There's a,
than men?
there's a lot in that question. Let me begin, I guess, here. We have what I call the great mismatch. That is, that the male dominated wealth management industry serves up what women indicate to researchers that they don't want. The truth of the matter is, and this has been quantified by multiple research studies from McKinsey and BCG and other companies, that men and women of the boomer age group fundamentally look at money differently. Men are concerned about stock picking and historical performance. Women are more concerned about their values being recognized and long-term security. When I looked at the research before we developed the Women in Income program for a couple of years, what I found was a theme that repeats over and over again, that women are concerned about goals, risk reduction, and confidence. And that is not the formula that most advisors serve up when it comes to, helping a woman create retirement income. In fact, it's very much different. And so we have this, friction and this mismatch. And that has to be resolved, and I'm trying to, in my own way, through my writing and speaking, trying to help male advisors, understand these issues, reminding them that there's a reason that 7 out of 10 men are fired by widows within 1 year of their husband's passing. So if you were to say, well, how would you describe an industry that loses 70% of its customers? Would you say that it was in need of reform? Would you say it was broken? Would you say it was destined to fail? I'll go so far as to say this, that if a male advisor is not able to develop an authentic relationship with a boomer woman client, he might as well leave the business now because he doesn't have any chance of succeeding. We're within 5 or 6 years of women controlling virtually 100% of wealth assets. And, if you can't have a relationship that's meaningful with the person who controls the money, you can't have management of the money. To me, it's pretty simple.
So I heard two different things. I heard many things that you just said, but part of it was the solutions and the approach that's taken. And the other part is the relationship. And I think those are really two separate things. So let's start with the relationship part. When for years, I've been speaking to financial advisors, and through parts of that period, I was speaking about how to work more effectively in the women's market and how to have better communications. And I have rarely, if ever, heard a male financial advisor say, you know what, I suck at working with women. Show me how to do this better. Most of them think they're really good at it or fine. So how do you fix that disconnect, or how do you motivate advisors to even be better if they think they're already good?
It's a terrific question, and it goes to pointing out the false sense of security that men feel. The reason, if you were to interview women who fire the male advisor, you typically will get a response like, oh, he was great with my husband, and they looked at their charts and their graphs and their numbers, but I need to be heard. I need my concerns to be understood. And what happens is that when the man is fired, he typically is surprised. It hit him like a ton of bricks, came out of nowhere because he thought he had a relationship. But the reality is that he had no relationship with the spouse. He disregarded her unintentionally, perhaps over the years. He played to the man. He made false assumptions about the woman. He assumed that, she was necessarily risk averse, or that he didn't understand as much about money as the husband did. All these false assumptions over time create an alienation process. And that results in the decision to terminate the advisor. So think about that. Think about the scale of this. You have as much as $30 trillion. You have the majority of male advisors going to be fired, which means you have trillions of dollars in motion. This is the greatest business opportunity in the history of financial services, but it won't work. It won't be realized unless there are changes. JP Morgan said that they see a huge opportunity to serve women and help them manage their wealth in the way they want to do it, but it starts by listening. Implication meaning they haven't been listening. Well, the whole industry hasn't been listening.
Yeah, I just recently had someone tell me this story. This is a guy he and his wife are in their 70s. They're very wealthy. They had an advisor for many years who was retiring, and the advisor said, look, I want you to meet this guy who's taking over work with a lot of my clients, younger. And in my mind, I would have thought, oh, these younger advisors are going to be better at this than someone who's older. So they meet with this advisor and what the guy who told me this story said, he said to the advisor, like, look, my wife is a forensic accountant. She's really good at what she does. We make decisions equally. And he kept talking to the gentleman in the conversation. He totally ignored her. And even though the guy who told me the story said he kept directing it back, that they both make decisions, he kept referring and just making the conversation towards this guy. The wife hands my friend a note in the middle of the meeting that says, this guy's words I'm not going to say, I'm out of here. And then this guy hands the note to the advisor, and he goes, I think we're done. And the wife was a little upset that he handed him the note. But it's not an age thing, which I would have thought like, oh, these guys that were brought up when it was really men talking to men, it's not really the case.
I'll think about a younger male advisor. Whose behavior has he been modeling? Right. There's a lot of bad habits that can be transferred.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cultural, issues here. There's stereotyping issues that are very, very powerful. It's something that has to be broken. It has to be changed. We have to coach. We have to educate. We have to enlighten men. I don't
So,
think that the need can be addressed without the participation of men. They have to be part of the solution.
well, for sure, because what were you saying before? It's 84% of advisors are men. Is that the percentage you
Yes,
gave me
that's
before we
right.
went on? Yeah. So I know there's more women coming in, but women aren't necessarily the solution. All women don't want to work with a woman advisor. They may feel more comfortable because
Mm-hmm.
communication might flow a little bit more easily. But there's, that to really serve people, the guys just have to be better. And as you said, to keep their practices relevant going forward. Um, to tie this back into something else, with all of AI and all these online solutions, these communication skills aren't just important for your women clients. They're important for you having a relevant business going forward.
Well, you're right. And let me tell you this. Um, Men are going to have to change. They're going to have to learn how to relate to women. And the good news about this is, if the research is very clear, women are not saying they don't want to work with men. They're saying they want a relationship with an advisor, an authentic relationship where their voice is heard, where their plans and objectives and preferences are implemented. It's really important. Now, I'll tell you what I think will happen, because you mentioned AI. If the industry doesn't get it right here and men don't make changes, there will be innovation where AI becomes the advisor. And if you think about Chat GPT right now, and you were to project that forward in another year or two or three, I can envision a woman having a discussion with a virtual advisor through AI that truly listens to her and truly designs a plan that is, in recognition of her particular needs and preferences, as opposed to serving up what she doesn't want, creating exactly what she does want. And, something will fill the void, and it will be AI, I believe. I've written about this. I've written sort of, a conversation, imaginary conversation between an AI financial advisor and a woman, 5 or 6 years from now. This is the risk that the industry faces if it doesn't, look inward, be self-reflective, and make the changes that have to be made.
It's fascinating. David, talk a little bit more about the actual solutions that, you're saying women are concerned about the longer term, their security. Talk a little bit more about how solutions can be crafted specifically for women and how that might be different than the industry
Sure.
is currently doing.
Yep. Well, let's start with what the industry is currently doing. The majority of the investment advisor community, says, let me think about my, systematic withdrawal strategy. Right? You've been dollar cost averaging into the market for years. Well, we'll just dollar cost average out, and we'll back that up with a Monte Carlo simulation that says you have a probability of 90% of being successful. Wrong, wrong. For constrained investors, dead wrong. For constrained investor women, double dead wrong. Here's why. That approach does not make room for what is the most important concern of a constrained investor, especially a constrained investor woman. There's no protection against longevity risk. There's no protection against timing risk. Now, then you say, well, what would be protective? So this is my opinion. I developed a solution for women that you mentioned earlier called Women in Income. And the model there is what I believe, after 19 years of studying these issues, is the ideal solution for a constrained investor. And basically, that is creating two forms of retirement income hybrid solution, which is classic bucketing setting up tranches of money. Each tranche, let's say, is going to provide income over a 5-year period. So you could imagine a strategy where you have 5 buckets producing certain income over five consecutive 5-year periods, 25 years, but adding to that, underneath those buckets, an annuity that's going to pay a lifetime guaranteed income. And typically that annuity would start after 10 years. And the reason is that in the strategy, there are 2 safe money buckets up front, which are going to provide 10 years of secure income with no risk. But we have to worry about later on. And that's where the lifetime annuity comes in. So what happens is when you do this, you get the protective features that you want. You get protection against timing risk. You get protection against longevity risk. And I always tell advisors, if we get into a period where the markets get really rough, where we have sustained losses or high volatility, your female clients and your male clients will all be the same in this regard. They'll all be nervous. At least you can get on the phone and say, look, Mary, let's remember what we started here. First of all, you're not going to need that second bucket for another 7 years. In the meantime, your paycheck is secure. Ride this out. And Ellen, what we found over the years is that when the client knows that their monthly paycheck is going to be secure, it makes it easier for them to stay invested with the risk assets in their strategy. And to me, that makes all the difference because I will say this. Somebody said to me once, what is the best approach for retirement income? I said, oh, it's the one you can live with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we found that people can live with this one.
I can totally see how people in general would feel comfortable for that. And it may be out there because you do all your, spend your time in this, but I haven't really heard of a legitimate's probably not the right word, a structured solution for women investors versus one that's somewhat placating, like where the brochures just have women in them.
Oh yeah, we have the true structured solution. I can promise you that, and it's very effective. It's built upon a model that's been proven effective. I can remember vividly in 2008, 2009. The contrast with advisors, some of them who were down in the dumps and really sad. In February of 2009, I chaired the communications conference, first retirement income communications conference ever held by the Retirement Income Industry Association. And after I made my presentation, an advisor from New Jersey, I'll never forget this, came up to me with tears in his eyes. And I said, what's wrong? What happened? And he says, I came here to learn a different way. I lost my 3 biggest clients, 2 of which were good friends. I had them in a systematic withdrawal strategy. And when the market, went crazy in 2008, they left. They permanently eroded their retirement lifestyle by doing that. And he said, I know that doesn't work anymore. Now, then we went on to have 14 years of market, growth. And so when you have an increasing market, it covers up a lot of planning sins.
Mm-hmm.
But those will eventually get exposed. So I'm totally adverse to the idea of a systematic withdrawal with a constrained investor. I've written about it. I think it's totally inappropriate. And I'll just say one more thing, that advisors tend to back that up with Monte Carlo simulations. And a very important paper was written by Professor Wade Pfau and Macedon Young, CFA. It was published in January of this year. It showed crystal clear fashion that Monte Carlo is anything but scientific. It's arbitrary. And the results that you get are dependent upon the advisor you talk with. And so to put faith in that, you're really only creating, the illusion of confidence. My objection to Monte Carlo is that it is often in practical terms used as a proxy for safety and oftentimes used as a way to avoid an annuity. And that's not good.
It also, for me, I'm no longer working with the clients doing planning, but when I was, it was for a little bit confusing to me. Like, who wants just to be 90% confident, or what does 84 mean? Like, what if I'm in that, and part of it is I had been through 2 big recessions in my professional career. And what I appreciate about what you're sharing with people now is if you're newer in the industry, which isn't brand new anymore, if you weren't in business in 2008 and you've only seen up markets, you don't have the experience to know what it feels like to be with a client who is freaking out and feeling confident about their future. I remember saying to clients that if they were my clients who were closest to retirement felt the most comfortable, because I'm like, you've got cash here or you've got security for the next, I don't know what it was, 4 or 5 years. Do you think we'll come back before then? And they all said, yeah. And it wasn't as structured as an approach as you're talking about, but I can imagine having that ahead of time would make people feel more
Yeah,
comfortable.
that's a good point. And, I believe that most people need to have a downside measure of protection in their strategy because things can happen that we don't expect. I remember vividly in 1989, I was traveling around the country for a firm called Payne Webber, and they were sending me everywhere doing client seminars in retirement income planning. And I had a part of my presentation talked about Japan because in 1989, if you remember that, you're not old enough probably, but I certainly am. Um, Japan was number one. Their economy was about to run over the United States. 8 of the 10 largest banks on earth were Japanese. The Japanese had the highest rate of personal savings, almost 15%. Japanese real estate was the most expensive real estate in the world. There was a district in Tokyo called the Ginza district that was valued at more than the entire state of California. And between 1989 and over the next several years, what happened? The real estate lost 99% of its value. The stock market, the Nikkei 225, which reached an all-time high in December of 1989, is now, how many years later, 35 years later, is nowhere near where it was in 1989. Everything collapsed in Japan. And that taught me something. That taught me that we can't know what may or may not happen in the future, and you can't rule out any possibility. So in retirement income planning, where the most important financial issue for 99% of the people in retirement is their income, you can't leave that to an 80% chance of success or a 90% of chance of success. Or as Wade Pfau and Young pointed out in their paper, it might be a 62% chance, depending on the capital markets assumptions that you put in that Monte Carlo simulator. So it just doesn't work in my thinking.
I imagine that conversation of you don't know what's going to happen is a little bit easier for even newer advisors to hear now after going through COVID,
Mm-hmm.
where all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden everything changed. Or people who saw what happened to real estate in 2008, residential real estate, where I live
Yeah.
north of Chicago, and I remember thinking the real estate's might not keep going up, but it's not going to go down in this area. Which what we know now, I think, is that we don't know, and that so the more I appreciate that you're talking about ways to make sure not only that your clients are going to be taken care of, but that you've got a sustainable business going forward, that that you're not gonna lose sleep, and that people feel comfortable with that.
I don't think we can be complacent about anything. I don't think we have a right to assume success. And I always remind advisors, if you keep this in mind, it'll sort of govern how you behave, I think. In retirement, it's your income, not your savings, that create your standard of living. Therefore, protection of income has got to be the number one priority for the vast majority of people.
Well, I'm glad you're out there talking about it, because I don't hear this very often at all about focusing on the income versus the growth of your assets. And I think it's just
The
so
other thing
important.
you're right about that. And the other thing I'd remind advisors is because we went through that 14-year period of growth. Well, think about what that growth came from. It came from two things. It came from a first in history policy of dropping interest rates to zero. And it came from trillions of dollars of fiscal stimulus and money printing. That's what drove the market. It wasn't fundamentals. It wasn't, business people investing like in the old ways. The economist Richard Duncan says that we left capitalism years ago. Once the dollar was delinked from gold, we ended up with a system called creditism. Credit drives economic activity in the United States. Since 1964, we've had a 90-fold increase in credit. We went from $1 trillion in total credit to $90 trillion in total credit. And that's what created economic activity. Now, it's harder to create credit because we've got such massive deficits and such high inflation. The outlook for stocks as a result of that is probably not as strong as it once was.
We have covered a lot today, from working the women's market to income planning to what's happening in the world. What would you like the people who are watching or listening this, is there any final thoughts that you have that you want people to take away, David?
Yeah, think about your clients who may be constrained investors. Focus on not how much money they have, but the relationship to the amount of money and the income that they must create each month to have a minimally acceptable lifestyle. That's what you have to worry about. Covering that, making certain that they're always going to have that amount. It's not a lavish lifestyle, but it's enough to provide all their essential expenses and maybe a little margin for some enjoyable things in retirement. I think that's good. That's wise advice.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. If people want to learn more about your income retirement planning solutions and the work that you do at your firm, where should we send them to?
They could certainly visit my company website, which is wealth2k.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. I publish a vast amount of material that's hopefully providing some thought leadership and some guidance for financial advisors to be able to better serve, their clients, including obviously notably women.
That's great. And I would encourage all of you to do that. Find David on LinkedIn. Where we met is through
True,
LinkedIn.
that's right.
And he's besides brilliant thought leader in the industry, an awesome guy, a giver, which I really appreciate. So thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your information with us today, David. I'm
It's
very
my sincere pleasure. It was great to be with you.
watching and listening. I appreciate you being here. If we're not already with advisors, if you go to rogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, which is what extraordinary advisors know that others don't. I have some master classes coming up. I'd love to talk with you more. Under today is, how are you setting your business up and your clients up for success in the future? And remember, be great and create great every single day.